As we head into week 2 of the Lindsay Clancy trial, I have a question for you. Could you be one of the jurors? Could you sit through weeks of heartbreaking testimony in a case like this, where the first responders even break down and start crying on the stand?
Did you do anything to assist the medics at that time?
Excuse me. I asked if they needed any equipment.
Lindsay Clancy is accused in the deaths of her 3 small children. The judge says right now, it's the job of the jurors to look at all of the evidence. Here's Judge Sullivan.
You can't find facts or base your decision on sympathy, anger, passion or prejudice or pity for or against either side.
But come on, they've already heard the dad, Patrick Clancy, screaming in terror on that 911 call when he finds his children. They've seen evidence from inside that home, including the baby's pajamas and exercise bands that investigators say Lindsay Clancy used as weapons. In just a few minutes, I'm going to play each one of those moments, and veteran jury consultant Susan Constantine is going to give us her reaction. She says cases like these push jurors to their limits.
I think they have a flood of emotions from horror. I think they're visualizing those children, what that must have been like. So, and then rage, like rage. So there is a lot of emotions going on here.
How do you set aside your horror and decide a case based only on the law? Susan Constantine has spent years studying jurors in the most devastating trials in America. She was at the Casey Anthony trial, and she worked for the jury consulting firm that picked the jury for the Andrea Yates retrial. Like Clancy, Yates was charged in the deaths of her children, and she pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. How do you find jurors who can handle something like this?
People are going to pull out. That's going to be overwhelming. They may be breaking down. They may be crying a lot through it, would have to remove them because it's overwhelming, traumatizing.
Let's be clear. When this trial is over, this jury will have to decide Lindsay Clancy's fate. She could face life in prison if she's convicted of first-degree murder, or if she's found not guilty by reason of insanity, she could spend the rest of her life in a mental health facility. Be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on your notifications. We'll be updating this story. Now, let's get into it. Susan Constantine, thank you so much for joining me. It is so great to have you back as we talk about the Lindsay Clancy trial and sort of what we're dealing with here.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Tell me about your connection to the Andrea Yates trial back in 2002.
So my colleague was the one that was a jury consultant in the retrial for reasons of insanity. I think that there's a lot of similarities between the cases. And so I did a lot of research yesterday and also this morning to look at the jury pool and what is the difference between then and now.
How does this compare to what we saw in Andrea Yates? Because the case, as far as looking at postpartum psychosis and looking at a defense of insanity are very similar.
Today, we're looking at this jury pool. There are 12 women and 6 men. So why is this important? Gender is a big piece of it, right? Because a lot of the people that are on the jury are parents, both men and women. But as you know, women tend to be more emotional, more impacted by those types of things. But also keep in mind that a lot of times people don't realize that women are tougher on women than men are.
If you've never been on a jury like this, can you tell our viewers what it's like for this jury right now?
Well, first of all, they have the weight completely on their shoulders, right? There's a big weight that's there because what they do is they render verdict that sticks. So there's a lot of pressure, right? A lot of emotional, there's a lot of psychological pressure. They're a juror, they're not immune to the impact of what they're seeing and what they're hearing. So there's juror fatigue, there's juror stress. They could have anxiety, right? All of that is what a juror is going to feel like. Given the specifics of this case, this is not like a drug dealer killing another drug dealer, okay? Right. Lack of empathy, lack of compassion. You guys probably, created the situation. This is totally different. So I think that it's really important for people to really understand what a juror goes through. These are everyday people, just like you and I, everyday people hearing this horrible stuff. And not only that, they're actually seeing it, right? So they're actually seeing the evidence. No one is prepared for that. Unless they're in combat and they were from Afghanistan where they've seen a lot of trauma. This is not them. This is an everyday person experiencing what they see as the most traumatic thing they'll ever see, and they will never unsee ever for the rest of their life.
The makeup is 12 women and 6 men, and the jurors don't know who the deciding 12 will be. It is a large alternate pool, I would think, for that reason, right?
Yeah, because people are going to pull out. That's going to be overwhelming. They may be breaking down. They may be crying a lot through it, which would have to remove them because it's overwhelming, traumatizing. So that's why you've got such a large pool. Because you are going to have some fallouts. There's just no doubt. It's not just male or female. There's multiple things that you have to look at in their background, their experiences, their education, their occupation. Have they had any other types of traumas in their life?
Well, I'm going to play a snippet from the Lindsay Clancy trial now. It's week 1, and the prosecutor takes out the actual exercise bands that Clancy used in the deaths of her 3 children. And I'm going to pull this up right now so we can look at this together.
Yellow exercise band found with Dawson. Black exercise band found with Cora. And then the blue exercise band found with Callan.
I think what it does is it causes us all to pause, right? I mean, I don't know about you, but I actually can feel it in my throat. Like it's just like it's right here. It's visceral. You're seeing those ropes, they're rubber, right? They're kind of thick. They've got a metal hook on it. They've got also a handle on it. And you see her, right? She's blocking through her face.
She's not even, you can't see her, but you can see her. You can see her actually, her shoulders going up and down. And we're saying we're talking about Lindsay Clancy. You can see. Yeah. Are they watching her when this is happening, do you think? Looking for her reaction?
I think they're probably darting their eyes back and forth. They're looking at, seeing how she's responding, looking at it, seeing how she's responding, looking at, seeing how she's responding, and that she can't even look at it. She's like detached, devoid of even any attachment to it. And the breathing up and down is that high in the chest breathing, and then the face blocking, the hair blocking, all of that is it's like a horror story. You gotta shut the door because I can't even see beyond the door. That's what she's doing, right? Self-protection. And then she's grasping her attorney's hand. Does the jury, I don't know where the jury is positioned
to be able to see that. Yeah.
See that, but she has her hand over his hand. He's not holding her hand for support. She's holding his hand for support. And it's clenched. It's almost like white knuckling it. So it's intense, right? So I look at how is there's transference of energy, like she's going through this emotional point and she's transferring that energy by gripping his hand. And the jury has seen it. If you are on the jury pool, you see that after about the first one, maybe the second, you are doing a glance back and forth.
How are they coping with this right now, do you think? Like your jury, what are the coping mechanisms going on?
I think they have a flood of emotions from horror. I think they're visualizing those children, what that must have been like. So, and then rage, like rage. So there is a lot of emotions going on here. That's why this is such an emotional case. There's no way of getting around it. The state has to be so overwhelming with the evidence of premeditation that she was not in psychosis. She knew what she was doing, even though maybe and prove that she harmed herself out of guilt, right? Guilt,
like realized what she was doing, and then had to.
Yeah.
And then did what she did. How do you think we should be looking, as we're watching this? Because it's incredibly triggering. It's incredibly traumatizing.
We have to set, as hard as it is, we have to set, even as jurors, set it aside, and let the evidence prove the case or disprove it. That's what you have to do. You have to look at this thing as objective. And when I'm analyzing, just so you know, because I analyze a lot of cases, and how I'm able to do it so effectively, and I think these jurors have to do it too, you have to remove yourself from it and just follow the clues, follow the evidence, and let the objective data tell the story.
I want to show another part. This is when the prosecutor brought out the clothes that the children were wearing that night.
Helen's pajamas.
So, those jurors are looking at, of course, those are the little pajamas that they had when they found the children, but they're also looking at the size of the clothing, right? And the things they let little kids like. So it's kind of like their little personality is kind of built into the little outfits of their little pajamas that they're wearing. So when we look at, the innocence and the tininess of them, that they were unable to protect themselves, right? And so I think for the jurors, everybody, especially even men and women, it's not really a gender issue. They can visualize their kids in it. They can visualize their grandkids in those little pajamas. And that is a visual part of evidence. I call it evidence demeanor, but I will share with you over time, as they hear the evidence, the jurors hear the evidence, it's not that they become immune to it, but they resolve. There's a resolve about it, because then they become more focused. So I just want to let you know, it's not unusual that you're going to hit them with high emotion at the very beginning. And then when you start piling on all the evidence, there is a shift, psychological, mental shift to where they become more focused.
And that brings me to why the prosecution feels it's necessary to bring out the actual physical, like the baby clothes, as opposed to just showing a picture. Does it make to me, it's a much larger impact, but can you explain to us like why that is?
Well, it's when you think about fabric and touching it, and it's movable, it actually has, a fabric has a psychological connection, right? So if you saw a picture, it's too static. It's unemotional. It doesn't move.
The testimony that's coming in right now with the first responders who were on the scene, and we already went through the hellaciousness of the father of Patrick Clancy, but the first responders, you can see them literally physically, they're breathing heavily. They're trying to he's clearing his voice. These are big guys, New England guys who are trained for this, and you can feel the pain of what they're saying. I would only imagine that this is crushing for the defense.
Yeah. And so what we're looking at is a channel of our communication, which is psychophysiological response, right? That psychophysiological response is the breathing, it's the gulping, it's the licking of the lips, it's the heavy, maybe a sigh. And you can see the chest moving up, and higher up, right? The more anxiety. So that's pretty intense stuff, right? So what they're doing is they're trying to contain it, which actually exacerbates it. But a lot of law enforcement and first responders are taught a breathing technique. And I'm sure that they're probably doing this. It's actually called a four corner. It's a breathing technique to where they breathe in so many times and then they exhale so that they can keep their emotions down so they don't go into a panic. And that is something that they're taught. I mean, one of my really good friends who was actually a sniper. And he worked for the FBI. So he taught me how to shoot and how you had to do it from a sniper, how you actually had to control and contain your emotion through breathing. So that's what we're seeing.
Well, and so now, Susan, the jury's not getting any of that, right? Like, do they just get like blindsided? Is there any kind of preparation for that juror to be able to look at a picture of these graphic images of the children that are being described to us right now?
No, there is no coaching. You can tell verbally something, the jury is first of all, when they're pre-selected, when they're already being summoned, they're not told that yet. They're not given that. They're just now learning about, they're just being summoned, but they haven't learned everything about the case. The judge is the one who gave the instructions. And the only time they hear the instructions is that day when they're already selected. So there is no preparation. And they can't talk to one another about it. They can't talk to their husband about it. They can't talk to their kids about it. I always have a challenge with that when it's such a high profile case like that, because, there's no way that a juror can't come home and see the weight of it on their face and in their body. They're going to be just like overwhelmed, and
100%.
they can't talk about it. I mean, they're not supposed to talk about it.
No, they're not allowed to look at anything. They can't talk about it. I wonder if they can call their therapist. I mean, if they have a therapist, I wonder if they're calling their therapist to say, hey, look, this sucks.
I don't know what the rule is on that one. I've never experienced that before. They would have to have clearance by the judge in order for them to do that. They can't pick up the phone and call the therapist, because that therapist could leak information.
Well, and, going to the 911 call in this case, the judge did decide that we would not be, that would not be in evidence that we can hear, that it's not being live streamed. We're not hearing it. Anybody in that courtroom heard that 911 call. They saw the jurors crying during that 911 call. They heard how horrific it was. I mean, I am being told by the people that were in that room, that was the worst 911 call they've ever heard, which was Patrick Clancy.
That's why the state wanted it, right?
Right.
That's the impact that they wanted. They were walking in through an experience almost in real time. And it is, probably the tonality, the pitch, the franticness. We didn't hear it, but I'm assuming that's what was happening. What Dad saw, and the shock and awe.
The prosecution, no doubt, is making sure they know exactly what it felt like that night, from the first responders, from Patrick Clancy, from the 911, the feeling the clothes, to the fact that they're going to be walking through that house. They're going on a tour of that house. There is no way they're not going to be able to put themselves in the place of what happened that evening.
It was intentional, because actually that's what happened. And it shouldn't have been suppressed. So it is what happened. It is the whole truth and nothing but the truth, right? It is what the experience was. So they should be able to hear what the 911 calls. They should be able to see the little clothing of the little kids, in real, like actually seeing the clothing. They need to look at Lindsay as she's sitting over there and blocking herself. And, I'm sure that she actually is dealing with her own trauma and her own emotions, but it's overwhelming to actually put yourself back to that place, hearing it in real time, and then hearing the crying and everybody else in the background and sniffling, and all of that is going to be the shame and the guilt and all of that. I mean, it's a doozy of a case.
It's unbelievable. I've got here, and I wanted to play this for you.
Your Honor, we would ask that the 911 call be played.
As jurors who have taken an oath to follow the law, I'm instructing you that the law says you must separate any emotional reaction. You must not be influenced in any way by the unpleasant nature of some of the evidence.
The judge was very specific. He was like, you need to be able to separate out your emotions from what's going on in that courtroom right now. How do you do that, Susan? I mean, that's a tall order.
You got to tell yourself you got to do it. You got to tell yourself, I have to set this aside, and they have to go to business. I mean, they've got to look at all the evidence, separate their emotions from and look at the evidence. And you're going to see, the great thing about jury deliberations is you're going to have some that are having a hard time. You're going to have other ones that are following exactly the judge's instructions.
Sure.
And then you're going to have some support within that jury pool to help the others come along and look at this objectively, and just through the scientific and the research and the evidence. And so, I mean, he had to state it and put it on record. He had to. He had to instruct. That's part of the jury instructions, right? He had to instruct the jury because he's letting them know ahead of time what they're gonna deal with. So I'm gonna say it's not easy, but it's not impossible.
I feel like we're seeing the most emotional part of it right now. I would think that they're going to have to get into the nitty gritty over that. It's going to be an expert battle next. We're going to just have to see who wins on the medical condition of Lindsay Clancy.
Exactly. So what they'll do, they'll bring the emotion in the beginning. They'll start to bring the expert witnesses in, and they're going to tie it up with the emotion. That's what they're going to do. That's what the state's going to do. So they're going to, it's like they're sandwiching it in, right? So they're going to bring him back into that emotion again, because that's when they're going to go off and do the deliberation. And then, of course, the defense is going to do the opposite.
Drop a comment below. I want to hear what you're thinking. I've met jurors who have been on some of the most horrific trials, and it has stayed with them their whole life. How do you think these jurors are going to manage this kind of testimony, this kind of evidence? It's going to be something I think is going to stick with them for a long time, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. Be sure to like, subscribe, turn on your notifications, because we're going to be updating the Lindsay Clancy case as we go through this trial.